The rise of humanity's empire. The stars had never belonged to humanity. For centuries, Earth's people had looked up in wonder, dreaming of alien life. They imagined first contact as a moment of unity, a great step into a vast, enlightened cosmos. But when a moment finally arrived, it was not a handshake. It was war. The Zorith Dominion, a reptilian war empire spanning hundreds of systems, saw Earth as nothing more than another world to conquer. Their fleet, forged over millennia of galactic conquest, arrived in orbit with little regard for diplomacy. Their message was clear: submit or perish. Humanity refused. The First Contact War nearly ended in extinction. Earth's nations, divided by politics and history, found themselves helpless against an enemy that had already conquered a dozen species. But in the face of annihilation, humanity did what it had always done best: adapt, innovate, and fight. Survival demanded unity. The nations of Earth merged into a singular military regime, the Terran Dominion, sacrificing democracy for order, independence for strength. Wars once fought between human factions paled in comparison to the conflict against an enemy that viewed them as insects. And so humans evolved. They reverse-engineered Zorith technology, fusing it with their own advancements in artificial intelligence, cybernetics, and genetic warfare. Soldiers were no longer mere men and women. They became enhanced warriors, faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Zorith had ever faced. The Dominion developed orbital bombardment arrays, quantum drive warships, and planetary siege divisions, weapons of war designed not just for defense, but for conquest. The turning point came at the Battle of Sol, when the Zorith launched their final invasion, determined to burn Earth to the ground. What they encountered instead was the Void Fleet, humanity's first true interstellar war machine. Led by Supreme Admiral Darius Voss, a brilliant strategist forged in the fires of war, the fleet ambushed the Zorith Armada. The battle raged for days, but in the end, the invaders were broken, their ships reduced to debris, their empire shattered. Humanity had not just survived, it had become something more. With Earth secure, the Dominion turned its gaze outward. The war had transformed them. What began as a fight for survival became something else. Revenge, expansion, supremacy. The galaxy had shown no mercy to humanity, and now humanity would return the favor. The Dominion's fleets surged into the void, hunting the remnants of Azorith and claiming their worlds. But they did not stop there. Every alien civilization that had ignored their pleas for help, that had watched from the shadows as humanity fought alone, now found themselves in the crosshairs of the Terran war machine. A new empire had been born, one that would not kneel to any species. As the Dominion's banner spread across the stars, the message was clear. The age of human submission was over. The age of human dominion had begun. The war for dominion. The conquest had begun. With the Zorith Dominion broken, humanity's war machine surged outward. The Terran Dominion no longer fought for survival. It fought for control. Every battle hardened them. Every conquest refined them. And every world that fell under their banner cemented their place as the galaxy's rising power. But humanity was not the only force in the stars. The Zalari Collective, an insectoid hive mind spanning dozens of systems, saw humanity as an existential threat. Their queens whispered of the Terran advance, warning that the swarm had only two choices: fight or be exterminated. The Zalari had overrun lesser species for centuries, consuming worlds in an endless cycle of expansion. Now, for the first time, they faced an enemy just as relentless as they were. The Varathi Ascendancy, an ancient reptilian empire, watched in horror as the Terran Dominion crushed world after world. The Varathi had ruled their sector of space for thousands of years, believing themselves superior to all others. But the humans were different. They were not patient, like the Varathi. They were not bound by honor or tradition. They were something terrifying, adaptive, ruthless, and unstoppable. The Zalari and Varathi, longtime enemies, did the unthinkable. They forged an alliance. When the war began, The alien coalition believed that sheer numbers would break the Dominion's momentum. At the Battle of Cordith Prime, hundreds of Zalari warships and Varathi battlecruisers launched a coordinated assault on the Void Fleet, the pride of humanity's navy. The Terran forces were outnumbered nearly 4-1. And yet, they did not falter. Humanity had perfected war. The Dominion's AI-driven warships, each one capable of independent combat, moved with machine precision. Cybernetically enhanced Marines, faster and stronger than their alien counterparts, boarded enemy vessels mid-battle, tearing through defenses like living weapons. Orbital annihilation cannons reduced entire fleets to glowing debris fields in the cold abyss. The battle raged for days, but in the end, the result was the same as it had been for every enemy of the Dominion. The coalition was broken. The Zalari swarms were scattered, their queens fleeing to the outer edges of the galaxy. The Varathi ascendancy, humiliated, retreated to its last strongholds, desperately fortifying their homeworlds. But the Dominion did not stop. They pursued the Zalari into the depths of space, launching a campaign of planetary incineration. The hive worlds, once teeming with trillions, became nothing more than scorched husks of lifeless rock. The Varathi fared no better, world by world, system by system. Their empire crumbled under the relentless advance of the human war machine. Humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just conquerors, not just warriors. They were the storm that would sweep the stars clean. And the war was far from over. The fate of the conquered. The war had been won. The Terran Dominion stood unmatched, its fleets ruling the void, its armies marching across once proud alien homeworlds. But conquest was only the beginning. Now came the question of rule. Humanity had spent decades fighting for its place in the galaxy, and it had learned a bitter truth. Mercy was weakness. The Zorith had shown no mercy when they invaded Earth. The Zalari had sought only to devour, and the Varathi had fought to the last in their arrogance. There would be no treaties, no fragile peace. The conquered had one choice: serve or perish. Across the Dominion, occupied worlds were divided into 3 categories. The first were annexed worlds, those deemed useful to humanity. These planets, rich in resources and infrastructure, were integrated into the Dominion's economy. Alien populations were stripped of their sovereignty, their cultures dismantled, their histories rewritten. The Dominion allowed them to live, but only under human law, under human rule, speaking human languages, working for human advancement. The second were military colonies, planets that posed a strategic advantage but held rebellious populations. These were placed under the dominion of the Blackguard, the Empire's elite enforcers, who ruled with brutal efficiency. Any sign of resistance was met with swift and merciless retaliation. Cities burned. Entire bloodlines were erased. To defy the Dominion was to invite extinction. The third category was reserved for the worst offenders, extermination worlds. The Zalari homeworlds fell into this fate. Their hive nests, once teeming with trillions, were systematically burned from orbit. The swarms were not simply defeated, they were erased. To humanity, they were not people. They were an infestation, and the Dominion would not tolerate an infestation in its empire. But not all of the conquered accepted their fate. A resistance had begun to stir. The last remnants of the Varathi warlords, along with surviving Zalari drones that had gone rogue without their queens, launched a desperate insurgency. Using stolen Dominion weapons and the ruins of their former empires, they waged war from the shadows. Bombings in occupied cities became common. Dominion warships disappeared in deep space, their wrecks found drifting in silence. Even among humanity, voices of dissent grew. Was this the destiny of their species? To rule as tyrants? To become the very monsters they had once feared? Supreme Admiral Darius Voss, now the unchallenged leader of the Dominion's war machine, gave the answer. The Dominion would not be weakened by sympathy. It would not be restrained by guilt. Humanity had earned its place through blood and fire, and it would not be taken from them. The Blackguard was unleashed upon the insurgents. The purge was swift and brutal. Resistant cells were hunted down and erased. Cities suspected of harboring rebels were turned to ash from orbit. The Dominion did not fight wars of attrition. It fought wars of annihilation. As the final Varathi strongholds fell silent and the Zalari race faded into extinction, one truth became clear. Humanity no longer feared the galaxy. The galaxy feared humanity. The unchallenged empire. The war was over. The last flames of rebellion had been extinguished. The Dominion stood triumphant, its banners unfurled across the stars, its fleets patrolling the void like silent sentinels. Humanity had done the impossible, not just survive in a hostile galaxy, but conquered it. But conquest was one thing. Rule was another. With no enemies left to challenge them, the imperial order of mankind was declared. Humanity no longer saw itself as one race among many. It was the apex species, the master of the stars. The Dominion's leaders proclaimed the era of human dominion, a reign that would last until the end of time. On every occupied world, alien civilizations were reshaped in the image of their new rulers. The Varathi ascendancy was no more. Its remaining population was forced into servitude, their once mighty temples converted into shrines honoring humanity's victory. The Zalari were a footnote in history, their worlds lifeless, their names spoken only in whispers. Even species that had never taken up arms against the Dominion were given a clear choice: assimilate or vanish. Some humans saw this as justice. Others called it hubris. Among the Dominion's ruling elite, a new debate arose. Now that humanity had everything it had fought for, what came next? Supreme Admiral Darius Voss, now hailed as the Imperator of the Stars, believed expansion was the only path forward. If the Dominion did not grow, it would stagnate. The Empire's war machine, built for conquest, could not simply stop. It needed new targets, new wars, new enemies to crush. But others within the Dominion saw a different danger: the enemy within. Not all humans had accepted the cost of victory. In the vast cities of the core worlds, voices of dissent grew louder. Philosophers and radicals questioned the morality of endless war. Soldiers who had fought for humanity's survival now wondered if they had traded their freedom for empire. Some whispered that the Dominion's greatest threat was not an alien uprising, but its own hunger for power. The Imperator did not listen. To him, peace was an illusion. History had proven that power belonged to those willing to take it. If humanity stopped moving forward, if it became weak, the galaxy would rise against it once more. And so, as the Dominion celebrated its rule, the order was given: the fleets would march again. Beyond the known galaxy, unmapped sectors awaited. Strange, powerful civilizations lurked in the deep void, unseen and unchallenged. Humanity's destiny was not to rule one galaxy. It was to rule them all. As the Void Fleet prepared for its next great conquest, one truth became undeniable: the Dominion was eternal. The war would never end. The stars belonged to humanity now, and they always would.